The studio lights burned brightly above the glossy set of The View, illuminating every corner of the stage with a harsh, unforgiving glow. The audience, packed shoulder to shoulder, hummed with anticipation, their energy filling the room as cameras panned across eager faces. At the guest chair, Jennifer Lopez sat poised, her posture flawless, draped in a sleek cream-colored suit that seemed to shimmer under the lights. She was radiant, confident, the image of calm perfection at least on the surface. Her intention had been simple: promote her latest project, charm the audience, deliver a few rehearsed anecdotes. But almost from the moment the interview began, the tone shifted. Whoopi Goldberg, seated at the center of the panel with her signature commanding presence, leaned forward ever so slightly. The warmth in her eyes was gone, replaced with a look that signaled she was about to cut straight to the bone. "So, Jennifer," Whoopi began, her voice deceptively casual but edged with something sharper, "a lot of people are asking if your career right now is more about publicity than the work itself. What do you say to that?" The words seemed to slice through the air, drawing a startled murmur from the audience. Jennifer's lips curved into a smile, though her eyes betrayed the slightest narrowing. She shifted in her seat, tilting her head, forcing herself to remain composed. "With all due respect, Whoopi," she replied, her tone calm yet infused with steel, "I've worked too hard for too long to have my career reduced to a PR stunt. Everything I do comes from passion, from love for my craft." Across the table, the other hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Sunny Hostin adjusted her notes, her mouth opening as though to step in, but Whoopi raised a hand, halting her. "But isn't it fair," Whoopi pressed on, her voice lower now, more deliberate, "that when people see the headliners about your relationships, your projects falling through, the tours being cancelled, they start to wonder if maybe it's not all about the music or the movies anymore?" Gasps rippled through the studio audience, the tension thick enough to taste. Jennifer's smile faltered, her composure cracking just slightly. "Wow," she said slowly, leaning forward. "That's incredibly disrespectful. You don't know my journey. You don't know what it takes to keep going in this business, especially as a woman." The audience clapped loudly, some even shouting words of encouragement. Yet Whoopi remained unmoved, her stare steady, her tone dropping into something that felt almost like a warning. "Jennifer, don't come on this show and act like you're untouchable. This is The View. We ask the real questions here." The applause faltered into silence. All eyes shifted between the two women, watching as Jennifer's jaw tightened and Whoopi's gaze stayed locked. What had begun as a routine promotional appearance had turned into the spark of a public showdown. By the time the second segment began, the entire studio felt like a pressure cooker. The producers backstage were already whispering frantically into headsets, hoping the sparks between Jennifer Lopez and Whoopi Goldberg would cool down. But instead, the air seemed charged, thick with a kind of restless electricity. Even the audience, normally quick to laugh and applaud, had grown quieter, sensing that something raw and unscripted was unfolding before them. The co-hosts tried desperately to steer the discussion back to safer ground, throwing in questions about J.Lo's music, her upcoming performances, and even her personal fitness routines. Yet no matter how hard they tried, the conversation snapped back, circling the same tension like a storm refusing to move on. Finally, Jennifer sat up straighter, her voice cutting across the table, clear and fierce. "Let me tell you something," she said, her words rising with passion. "I've been in this industry for decades. I've broken barriers. I've inspired millions, and I refuse to let anyone undermine that." Her declaration earned an eruption of cheers from the crowd, the clapping echoing through the studio. But when the noise died down, Whoopi leaned back in her chair, unimpressed, her expression unreadable. "Look, Jennifer," she said, her tone clipped and deliberate, "no one is denying your accomplishments. But people also see the pattern. They see the drama. And when you come on here, you've got to be ready for honesty." Jennifer's eyes flashed, the veneer of calm slipping. "Honesty?" she snapped, her voice sharp. "Or is it just tearing a woman down on live television?" because that's what it feels like right now. The room froze. Joy Behar, usually quick with a joke, shuffled nervously with her note cards, glancing at Sunny, who looked equally uncomfortable. Behind them, the studio audience held their breath, the tension palpable. "You don't get to play the victim here," Whoopi shot back, her voice booming, her authority filling every corner of the set. "You want respect? Earn it without the headlines." The words struck like a hammer. Jennifer's chair scraped loudly against the floor as she shot to her feet, the sound harsh in the stunned silence. "I don't have to sit here and take this," she declared, glaring at Whoopi, her voice trembling with rage. "This is supposed to be a conversation, not an ambush." Gasps burst from the crowd, some booing, others clapping wildly. Whoopi arched her eyebrows, almost amused, and gave a tiny shrug. "Then maybe you shouldn't be here if you can't handle it." Jennifer's cheeks flushed with fury, her voice tight and controlled. "Maybe I shouldn't," she spat. "And maybe people will finally see what this show really is." The audience erupted again, a storm of divided reactions. Viewers at home were already flooding social media, typing furiously as the live broadcast captured every raw second. What was supposed to be polished daytime television had become a fiery spectacle of egos colliding in real time. The moment the cameras cut to a commercial break, chaos erupted behind the scenes. Producers hurried toward Jennifer Lopez, their voices hushed but urgent, begging her to stay calm, to return for the final segment and avoid turning the clash into a full-blown disaster. But Jennifer was livid. She paced furiously in the narrow backstage corridor, heels clicking against the polished floor, her hands trembling as assistants tried to adjust her microphone. Her jaw was tight, her breath sharp, as though each inhale was laced with fire. On set, the tension hadn't lessened. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the center of the table, unbothered, sipping from her oversized mug with the calm composure of someone who had seen countless storms before. The other co-hosts leaned toward each other, whispering nervously, unsure whether to intervene or let the clash play itself out. The studio audience, meanwhile, buzzed with chatter, the energy of a crowd that knew they were witnessing something extraordinary and unscripted. When the cameras came back from break, Jennifer reappeared. Her walk was brisk, deliberate, her expression icy and controlled. She sat for only a fleeting moment before shaking her head in disbelief. "You know what, number? I don't need this," she said firmly, her voice carrying across the studio. Gasps rippled as she yanked the microphone from her collar and tossed it onto the table. The sound of it hitting the surface thudded loudly, echoing through the otherwise silent stage. Joy Behar instinctively reached out, her face a mask of concern, but Jennifer was already rising to her feet. She turned sharply toward Whoopi, her words cutting like a blade. "You might think you can intimidate people, but not me. I've dealt with worse and I'm still standing." Whoopi didn't so much as flinch. Instead, she lifted her chin, her eyes cool and steady, and gave a single, almost dismissive nod. "Then go ahead, Jennifer," she said evenly, her tone dripping with finality. "Door's right there." Jennifer spun on her heel, her movements sharp, and stormed off stage. The audience reacted instantly, splitting into cheers, boos, and shouts, their voices filling the air in a chaotic wave. The cameras caught every second, and when they cut back to Whoopi, she allowed herself the faintest of sly smiles. "Well," she said dryly into the microphone, "that's live television for you." Within minutes, the clip would spread like wildfire across social media, headlines exploding. Jennifer Lopez walks off The View after explosive clash with Whoopi Goldberg. What had begun as a promotional appearance had become one of the most unforgettably and divisive moments in daytime TV history.